Hey everyone, back at Feed Your Brand for the end of our International Women's Day. I'm entering with Stefanie LaHart and I'm so excited. I'm so glad you're here because, hey, we're on social media all day today and we're going to talk to an expert here who's an expert in the art of becoming an entrepreneur in the social media age, which is you know what? It's really different. So I'm so glad that's your topic. But you have the Tradigital podcast, which I love that, Tradigital Talk podcast. And I love that title because that's what you are. I mean, we're doing a lot of traditional things, but we're doing them in a digital way. And you're merging that. One of my favorite episodes, I just want everybody to check this out because I am so glad that you did this. So at the very end of last year, you did your dirty secrets of the industry. I love that one. It's one of my favorites. So obviously I'm a listener, I'm a fan. Because I have to get information from somewhere too, right? I can't just be an expert in everything. So I got to rely on all these great people who are on my platform. And so that's the first place I turn when I'm looking for information. So yours is a frequent one for me when I'm looking for new information on what's going on in social media. And I love that one because those dirty little secrets are the things that I see on the other end when people come to me and it's all gone bad.
Yeah.
So you aired that. So tell me a little bit, because you have a ton of experience in traditional marketing and so you've had a lot of that. And I love that because you've got a great foundation for that and how to turn that now into digital conversations that translate. And so you talk about really making conversions. I mean, that's our industry in insider terms, but you call them converting to real world customers or having customer conversations. That's fabulous. Tell me some more about that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm in the perfect place right now. I mean, we're on a podcast and I'm at a podcast convention.
That's right.
And you mentioned my podcast and I'll have you know, I only came up with the idea for my podcast and launched it after attending here at PodFest Multimedia Expo last year. Because as you said, I'm a social media strategist and PodFest was one of my clients last year. So I showed up last year. I was handling all their social media. I come to the event. I do live social media the whole time. And people kept asking me, what's your podcast? What's your podcast? And I was like, oh, I don't have one. And they have this event that goes on called the Strategic Alliance, which Tom took part in last night too. And what it is, it's 84 tables, 7 people at a table, and you sit at the table and they have various questions. So it's basically like speed dating for podcasters and networkers. And as you go through these questions, you learn more about the person or their podcast. So at table number 1, they're like, what's your podcast? I'm like, I don't have a podcast. And then we go around the table and they're all talking and I'm like, screw this. By table number 2, I have a podcast. So as I'm sitting there, I came up with the name, I came up with the concept, and I tested it at the next table. I'm like, my podcast is called the Tradigital Talk Show. They're like, what's that about? I'm like, that's where traditional PR meets digital marketing. And they were like, that sounds fascinating. So by the end of that, you go through 7 rounds of it. By the end of it, I had fully fleshed out my podcast and I called up my soon-to-be co-host, my best friend Sharon, and I said, hey, guess what? We're going to do a podcast. And she's like, what? Because Sharon is traditional PR. She's had her own PR firm for 20 years. She's well-versed in that area. And she's so traditional, she's not on social media at all. She doesn't even have like a friends and family Facebook page, which most people succumb to. So our talk show has been so great because she truly teaches me stuff every week and I teach her stuff. And like you said, there really is we use a lot of these traditional methods and we call them like new words. We make up new terms and we think it's something different. And there was actually a gentleman here who has spoke. His name is Bill Schley, and he was talking about micro scripts. Okay. You know what micro scripts were called back in the day? Taglines. That's what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, it's a tagline. About how your microscript, your tagline can be so impactful. It can really set up, the tone and the terms for your business. And he has a great book where he really outlines how this is played out in politics, how they use those one-liners, call them a tagline, one-liner, or their microscript, to really, not only launch what their platform is and their idea, but to get people invested. And I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I do, because I teach people how to get that. I call it cocktail conversation. How do you start that cocktail conversation that literally has to be a one-liner to get people invested enough that they stop doing whatever they're doing and say, I'm sorry, what was that? I'm really interested in that. Exactly like I did with the Strategic Alliance last year. I sat down at the table and I had something to say that sounded interesting enough. And I said it in one sentence and people are like, oh, well, tell me more. And the more I had to talk about it, the more I fleshed out the idea. Tracy, it was amazing. But that
I call that my airplane conversation. So
yeah.
because that's how it started for me. It was be like, there's that person who sits next to you in business class or whatever. And then they go, oh, so what do you do? And so I finally started varying it over time. And I turned it into so originally, you may not know this, but before our podcast business, right, we were in product design and development. So I told people I was a ghost designer who designed products that you bought every day at mass market retail like Costco and Walmart and Target. And people would be like, a ghost designer? I never heard of that before. And so then you would end up with a conversation your entire plane ride. So I learned really quickly not to have that conversation if I was tired.
Yeah.
Don't say that tagline.
Great intro because you could have just said, oh, I make these products or kind of blew it off. But because you used a microscript of I am a ghost designer that, what did you say? I make products that you use every day.
You buy and use every day from Costco, Walmart, Target.
Yes, that's a microscript. You did it.
I know.
That's beautiful.
That's because I'm technically kind of in PR because I'm in the media. So I'm a writer for Inc. magazine and stuff like that. So I'm actually a writer. I have 3 columns now. So I write a column for Authority magazine, which is new, and we're featuring podcasters. And I've been writing my column for Inc. and it's in innovation. And that one is, I'm in my 4th year. And then I also write for Thrive Global whenever I can. It's still more of a contribution side because I just don't have enough bandwidth to do it all. But I was mentioning your Dirty Secrets podcast, which I loved. And I love to just talk a little bit about that because I think there's a lot of, and myths and misconception could be also what we talk about here. But, here we are, like so many people just like, oh, I hate Facebook. I hate it. And here we are live streaming on it and utilizing it. And it is really a great tool. I just don't want to have to do it. So and so I actually have Dirty Secrets of PR from the media perspective, like what you don't know when you pitch us. And so I have it's a flyer. We put it out for free all the time. Whenever I give a talk, I just give it away because I want people to know that when you're pitching, there's an angle to it that's a little bit different now that we're in the digital age than it used to be in traditional PR. But it's not what you're saying. Like that's not different. How you say it and what you say. It's just how you're getting it to me and how you're finding me. That's how it makes the difference.
Yeah, totally. And Sharon touches on a lot of that during our podcast, because like I said, she's teaching me stuff all the time. She's like, look, you have to understand when you're trying to speak to media, you have to have the story fully formed before you go to them. Right. You don't go to them with like a spec sheet and just say, hey, I just launched this product, business, or service. Now you figure out how to package me. Like you essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, you go with a story and you make sure the person you approach is a person that would normally cover a story like that, and then see if that is something that's
the trick right there,
yeah.
right? Make sure
she taught me that. I didn't know that.
Make sure it's in their beat, right? That's what they call it. It's a beat, right?
Exactly.
So, right. And so when I write about innovation, someone goes, well, I want to write, I'm a health empowerment coach. I'll be like, yeah, not so much, not going to happen. Right. And so we're wasting each other's time when we have that conversation. So when you go straight to the right person, then it makes a big difference and they're really willing to listen to that story and you're helping them by writing that story. So that's so important. But I think social media is the same way in a way, because you're serving up little bites and bits of stories that intrigues those of us in the media or wherever you might be trying to get, or customers and clients and conversion as well. So having that story formulated in your head already makes for better social media, I would imagine.
It does. And then you're a lot more clear about who you're talking to and what you want to speak to them about. Because, there's nothing worse than getting, like somebody starts to get you into the conversation and you start thinking, this person is just wasting my time. And we see that all the time. And the thing about social media is you only really have seconds. The finger moves so quickly. We all have power fingers now. You only have seconds to get somebody's interest enough that they want to get into an initial conversation with you, and that's why it is important that, you know what you want to say and you know who it pertains to. Like if people, the big, the joke in business, people's like, well, who do you work with? Well, anybody that'll pay me, right? Well, that's the worst response ever, because it's not true. And your service doesn't actually apply to everyone. Like I could say, well, on social media, I could do it for everyone, which, isn't true. I could do it, but am I doing it effectively? Am I doing a service to myself or this customer? Probably not. Like if I were to sit there and be like, I'm an expert in the legal field. Well, I'm not really going to be great for someone in the legal field. But, so that is the thing about social media that has really changed. You have to be more succinct and really tight and really clear in your mind about not only what you do, but who you want to work with. And it's not just about like, well, I just only want to work with special people, or it's just like, you have to understand where you fit in the food chain, because if you don't, like I said, people are going to check out early of that conversation. They're going to know immediately, this doesn't pertain to my life. I mean, there's nothing worse than somebody trying to sell you something that has nothing to do with your life. That's why I'm a huge fan of the fact that everything you do on your browser gets tracked, and then you see there's advertisements everywhere. Because I tell people,
it's like a mirror there, like, oh, I've been, so yeah.
But I would rather have ads served to me that pertain to my life. You deal with TV a lot. If you watch TV during the daytime, I mean, it's horrible. These ads that are running, they're not pitching to me, but I have to sit there and listen to them. So wouldn't it be great if TV was more intuitive, so they knew a little bit more about me? So every time I turned on the TV, it pertained a little more to my life. Now, I mean, that can also you can think, well, that could be super creepy, because then you could like tie yourself into a box and never see another point of view. But as I tell Sharon every week, I come from the land of unicorns and rainbows, which means everything is always done in an altruistic, really good for the world kind of way. And I do believe that, for the most part, people are really interested in making sure that your experience is positive. So, I'm hoping TV will catch up at some point, because, I don't know about you, but I never turn on like local regular TV anymore, because it's just like,
Well, I don't turn on any that I can't fast forward through the commercials on, right? Because I just don't do that anymore. That I don't have time in the world for that. But
No.
yeah, you're so right. Something so interesting, Stefanie. So as I've listened to your podcast over time, and I've read I've read through some of the posts, because I'm more of a reader than I am, even though I do listen as well. I like to read sometimes because you have great links and stuff like that. But I noticed that in the particular episode, you were talking about how we title things and the debate between clickbait titles. And we tend to do that in social media and other things, but we do not do that in podcasting. And I believe that you learned that from us, because we've been hammering that home, and from the PodFest community, I hope, because you know what, it's different. It's like you're out here and you're real and you're authentic and you're doing that. And that is hard to hide in a podcast. And so, putting that out there from the title all the way through to everything that you do and the post that you make after is really important. We're having a little bandwidth issue in the hotel, but that happens. Stefanie will come back and we'll have the recording. Again, this is one where if you want, you can listen to the podcast and get all about it. So hopefully we'll get her right back and we'll be able to have that question answered. So I'm just going to, there we go. We're popping back in. There you go.
Okay.
Ooh, there you are.
Yeah, sorry, I'm on the hotel Wi-Fi, so I'm hoping it's I hope it's
That's what everybody went back to their room right at this moment, and that's what happened. Everybody tapped out the bandwidth. I was just talking. We had a big issue with Lillian Walker's episode, and there she is. She's a video person, and her video is constantly cutting out. She was like, "I'm so like the universe is conspiring," but here we are. So I was mentioning about that, and I'm not sure how much you heard, so I'll repeat it. But if you were talking about the difference between clickbait headlines and regular headlines. And in this podcast community, we really push out that you're there to be of service to people and be found in the ways that they're searching. And so being real and true to that, both in how you present yourself and how authentic you are, that has to translate into the headlines and everything you do, and even into how you share it afterwards. And trying to avoid that sort of clickbait thing serves you better in the long run.
Yeah, and here's the thing about clickbait. Clickbait does not work for podcasts, and here's why. People utilize clickbait online because for the most part, they just need you to go somewhere and they get paid just for you visiting that page. If I clickbait you and I make up a title of my podcast and then you go to it and it's nothing like what you were expecting, you're just going to click off. And by the way, I'm not getting paid for that anyway. I don't get paid just because you clicked on my podcast. So it does not serve me in any way to lie to people about, what the subject matter is or what we're going to be talking about. I will tell you, because I am doing something specific. Okay, Sharon is traditional PR. She's not on social media at all. And she was very hesitant in the beginning because she is not used to sharing, okay? Social media, for as long as we're very comfortable with sharing. She had a lot of fear about that. So we're on show number 20, and she is finally getting warmer now, like feeling like, oh, okay, maybe I could be a little bit more of myself. So in our very last show, the title of our show was How Do I Know When To? Because one of the questions that both of us get is, how do I know when to launch my social media? How do I know when I need a press release, right? So I started out the show unbeknownst to her, because I was actually I was at her house and we were in her office, and Sharon has a side hobby, which is turning into a business, where she breeds, raises, and sells tarantulas.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. So I know this about her. She's never made it public, but we're in her office and she usually has the tarantulas all behind her, and they weren't there. And I'm like, Sharon, where are the tarantulas? Well, we've had a very unseasonably cold winter in LA. And she's like, well, I had to get a heating cabinet for them because they're tropical. So she opens up this cabinet and there they are. And they're in little cages and boxes. They're not just like roaming around free or anything.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, no. It's, and so we were laughing about that. So when we started out the podcast, I brought that up and started talking to her about it. And she was laughing and very relaxed. And then of course, as soon as the show was over, she's like, you have to edit that whole tarantula thing out. And I go, why? Okay, you're going to love this. I go, why? I go, people are going to love it. It makes you more relatable. It makes people feel like they know you a little bit better. And she goes, yeah, but what if somebody who's listening to us has like severe arachnophobia and then we lose a listener? She was worried that we're going to lose listeners because they're afraid of spiders. That's not your concern, Sharon, really.
Yeah,
but it was so cute. And I have to tell you, people here, because like I've been like networking here at Podfest Multimedia, and everybody, like when they're like, I'll check out your podcast, they pull up the most recent one. Well, that's the most recent one. People love it. They love it. They're like, that is so funny. Now, they're not big spider fans, but they love the fact that she has an outside interest that we're talking about. And I'm like, oh, that's what you have to do.
This is a thing that I really love about podcasting. And I'm so glad we're talking on International Women's Day, because this is a thing. It's like so much of like what they're out there and some of the coaches are teaching you, like, just, vomit out your whole story and like do all of this. But in podcasting, we have to go the distance, right? This is a marathon and you are a marathon runner. So this I know about you. You're about to run your 11th marathon.
Yes.
That's impressive.
In 2 weeks, I will be running LA. It'll be my 7th LA marathon, my 11th full marathon. And it will be, I've also run 10 half marathons. So the half marathon is 13 miles. The full marathon is 26.2 miles. So it'll be my 11th. 11. The Spinal Tap joke, why does it go to 11? Well, because it's there. So that's pretty much me with the marathon running. And
I love it.
My meditation, I love it. I don't run with music or even listening to podcasts or anything. I just love to totally be in a place where nobody can connect. I can't connect to anyone and nobody can connect to me. I can't pick up my phone. It's a great place to disconnect.
That's a great reason. I love that. I love that. Well, tying into the marathon thing that's what I love most about podcasting, is that we don't just vomit out that story. We give it out in bits and pieces, and people get to know us over time, which is a much more natural way to communicate.
Yes.
It's a more natural way to build a relationship with people. And so like, people find out, oh, I have kids, it just comes up in conversation over time. Or like today we had Christy Whitman on the show, and she goes, Alexandra's your daughter. And I was like, yeah. She's like, oh my gosh, I just made that connection and I've been working with you for how long now? And so that, that's it, that over time, it just reveals itself in your relationships with your clients and people. And that's what I love about it. That's more authentic.
It really is. And because of social, we are in a space now where we're used to oversharing. Yeah. And the crazy thing is, some people, and I think people are now starting to learn more, they expect you to know this amount of stuff about them. So there was a time there where people would post up on Facebook, and if you didn't respond, like, or say something about it when you actually saw them in person, it was like, oh, well, Tracy didn't even ask me about that. And she clearly read it on Facebook. Like, no, not everybody's reading every one of your posts. And you're right. We had gotten into a space where we weren't expecting natural conversation, but I think we're now getting back into that healthy space where we're like, oh, okay, maybe you wouldn't have known that, so I can't be mad at you. And also it gives me now a way of like having a more natural interaction with you. So I can tell you stories and you don't sit there and glaze over and be like, yeah, I already read your Facebook feed or saw your Facebook Live and I don't care. So it's just crazy. Social media has given us a way of connecting like to more people on a deeper level, but because the connection is so easy, I think we're learning now how to manage that better. Because remember when the phone was first developed, okay, when phones first went into people's houses, They had to learn how to interact on a phone. People had to learn protocol. People had to learn what society's expectations of a phone call would be. In the beginning, phone calls were very serious business. Only people who were very wealthy had a phone, right? And they were used for business, like very serious kind of topics. You didn't call up and just be like, oh, hello, and just talk for hours and hours. It was a very short conversation. There was a definite like meaning to it. If you watch old movies, my favorite is on Meet Me in St. Louis. The oldest daughter is waiting for a call from her beau, and the whole family's sitting around because they know if he calls, it means it's getting serious. And even that conversation lasted maybe a half a minute, you know what I mean? But what I'm saying is like you learned at that point how to use that technology, and then everybody started developing these social norms, and we all started accepting and agreeing on it. Okay. So then social media came around very quickly. Technology is moving very fast, and we did not know in the beginning how to handle it. So people were first blurting things out and just doing things that now you look like you're like, no. And you know, one of the things I teach my clients is Social Security now, which is about, you know, as business owners, because so many of the gurus and the coaches for a long time were saying, tell everybody your entire lives. Now what I'm doing is trying to rein people back and be like, let's think about how much of your personal information you actually want to put out there, that, you know, to make sure that your family, your business, and just you are secure on a daily basis. Because the fact of the matter is, even though I live in the land of unicorns and rainbows, there are people out there that could take information and use it against you. And here's a great example for you, what I train my clients on. When you're doing something like this, like a live video interview or whatever, be aware of what's in your background. Like I'm just in a hotel room right now. It doesn't matter. There's nothing around me. But you have stuff hanging on the wall behind you, right?
She's talking about my background, by the way. Wrong side. This is an Albers print, which is a classic color palette, which says something about me. And over here, that right there, that's Dr. Minette Roarden's, one of my favorite people. She's got a great book. It's her business plan for creatives. And so anyway, I always like to keep those in the background, and every so often Minette will comment on it. She's like, my tool is in the background, my business plan. I'm like, yep, that's right. It's right back there. So I keep that because I do know, I'm aware of what's in my background and thinking about that. And Stefanie is so smart in sharing that with us, because you know, this is why I didn't get on Facebook right away. I actually was afraid to, and because I was afraid of all that security, like it wasn't about me being who I am. I'm very who I am out in person, but being out there on social media and there being so many potential security risks for it scared me. So I was telling people what was in my background while I was there, because I actually am very aware of it. And so this is actually Dr. Minette Roarden's business plan for creatives, which I totally love. And so every so often she'll see a video with it, and then she's like, I can't believe you still have that on your wall. I'm like, I keep it there all the time. And so, but yeah, you're right. It's the security thing is a big, big deal.
Yeah, because also like if people are like filming from their offices, whether it's a home office or an office somewhere, you know, frequently we'll have things like calendars on the wall or notes and stuff. And you have to be aware of that you're putting that information out there, because what could happen in a real world circumstance, and this has happened to many CEOs, this is the problem, where information is found out about them, and say there is somebody that wants to infiltrate that company. So the human component is, they always call the weakest link, and they call it social engineering. So basically you're hacking a human. What if you knew something about me that then you could utilize in a real world situation? Well, I know Tracy likes to go to this Starbucks. I know she's into this business color wheel. I'm going to go to that Starbucks. I'm going to naturally start up a conversation with her. I'm going to input that information. And guess what? Now I have a bonding episode with Tracy. Now she feels like, oh my God, Stefanie, we should go like have coffee or something. I think and then if I was like trying to like infiltrate a company or a CEO, that's my door in, right?
That's right.
So it's like on social media now, you have to be aware of that people do utilize stuff like that. And I don't mean to like scare anybody, but understand that information is power, and something could be used in a way that you had not expected. So,
right.
You know, that's something that I'm very passionate now to make sure businesses understand that, and they're training their employees that. Don't take pictures of your workstation and post them everywhere online. Security. Oh, I love this. Okay, so I took part in a big contest last year. There is a hackers convention called DEF CON. It's been going on for 25 years.
I was going to mention that. You went to DEF CON. So this is why you're so sensitive to security. I love it.
So I go to DEF CON because I had entered a contest called the Social Engineering Capture the Flag contest. It is a part of DEF CON, and it is hacking humans. So what happens is before the contest, they gave us a Fortune 500 company. And then what we do is we go online and we do something called online intelligence gathering, which is OnSIT, okay? Anything you can find out online that, like I was saying, you could use to somehow infiltrate that company. That's what you put together in this report. You submit the report. If it's accepted, then you're invited to Vegas. You get on stage in front of 700 people and you call that company and you live hack them on the phone.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
you have such guts, Stefanie. I totally love it. I love it.
So much like California and Nevada is a 2-person permission state. So if you're calling somebody, you cannot record them without their permission. So when you're on the phone, it's not being recorded at all. Okay. So it's not like there's any kind of like illegal activity there. In fact, when you're speaking to the audience, they can only hear you speak. I don't even think they could hear the other person. So basically you're trying to get information on the phone and you get flags for the various information you get. So I ended up with the second highest call score of the entire tournament. I think I hit like 600 points and flags, which was amazing. I did not win it because I didn't do as well in my written report. Honestly, when I was doing the report, I kind of didn't spend much time on it because I didn't read the directions and I didn't realize it was 50% of the grade. So
there you go.
This year, I'm going back strong. I've already entered the contest. I'm going back strong in August. But I mean, you have to be, social engineering is a real thing. So when I started doing more investigation and education, I was like, this is something I need to make businesses aware of, because there are still the people, the coaches, the gurus out there, people who are selling courses, and they're telling people misinformation at this point. It's like, no, don't vomit everything out. Like you said, let it be a little bit more natural. Let's have a little mystery.
But this is so important what you're saying, because actually this is what I think makes me a great interviewer. Because I told Tom, I was like, I calculated between my ink column, because I've written for 4 years. I'm in my 4th year, and I write 6 a month. And then I do all interviews for every single one. And I also do interviews for 4 podcasts now. So I have 4. And so between all that, I think I've almost hit 1,000 interviews in the last 5 years. And so I know, yeah, seriously. And so I've gotten like really good at the interviewing process. And part of it is the research that you do ahead of time, and the fact that you listen to it, you read their book, you do that little bit of thing that makes them comfortable right at the beginning. It's actually something I share. There's a podcast on that, on my interview tips. And it is this exact thing, that social engineering that you're talking about. When you flatter them, especially the bigger the celebrity, the more important it is to do this. So I was introduced to Molly Bloom. If you haven't seen Molly's Game, or you should read the book.
I did. I just watched it.
Yeah. So she's
you met the real Molly Bloom.
The real Molly Bloom. So I interviewed her.
Exciting.
Yeah, I interviewed her, and I looked at her and I said, I read your book, because I had actually read it, and because the movie fascinated me, and I was like, I have to read this book now. And so I read the book, and I said, I read your book and I really enjoyed that insight into you. And that just, before we even started speaking, like, that just lit her up for the whole conversation. And she almost, they were rushing us through it, and she gave me like extra time, because I set up this thing. I said, I read your book and I cared about it. Right. And that in and of itself, that you're right, that moves that relationship just a step forward for you. And so you can use it to your advantage and for good in this land of unicorns and rainbows. Use it for good, because then you get a better story and you get a better interview out of the whole process. And they get, this isn't just some, interview that I just have to get through. They're like, somebody who's interested, and I can talk to them. And that really setting that groundwork it starts with a little bit of research and a little bit of reading, or a little bit of listening in most cases.
Yeah, and like you said, and when used for good, like something like that, what you did is you showed her that you cared enough that you took time to actually read the book, and
not just watch the movie, right?
And not just watch the movie, and not just like read like the talking points or whatever they gave you, because especially when she's doing PR for that, she's just used to people who have no interest in. I mean, they're just doing their job, kind of thing. Right. I'm sure she was very excited and refreshed when she got to someone who was like, I read the book and I really got something out of it, because most people just they didn't even watch the show online. They probably just saw a headline.
That's right. Well, and so it was like a 2-3 minute interview. It was really short, but I've asked her back to come on my podcast that I started out of that interview. Not just her interview, but a series of interviews I did at an event. And so she's agreed to come back on the show because we built that relationship, and I have this tiny little show, right? So, so that is how it can really help you. But today's International Women's Day, and it's the end of this, and you've got more events to get to, but my goal today was just to highlight all the amazing women that we have on our platform. And I wish I could do all of them. Like, there were so many, I only had so many slots today because I had a limited schedule too, but I'm so glad you came on this. And the theme that they went with today was balance for better. And I added life and harmony because I don't really love the term balance. So, and obviously you're doing a lot in your personal life. I mean, you're running and you're marathoning. I'm like, you've got a lot going on in your life, but really, how do you make that work for you?
Okay, well, so the working out and the running has been a part of my life. Like, working out has just been a part of my life, like most of my life. I was the one who, when Jane Fonda came out with her VHS tapes, I was immediately doing step aerobics. So working out for me has always been the way that I relieve my stress. And I understand the endorphin highs of it. So I make time for that. Like, we all make time. When people are like, I don't have time, it's like, no, you just choose to not make time for that thing. We all have the same amount of time, and truly, time means nothing. Time is endless because you make time for what you want to make time for. So whether that's your family or your business or whatever. So for me in my life, I make time for working out and running because it makes me feel good. It centers me. It's my meditation. It keeps me healthy. My body looks great. So, for me, it's not about like, how do you fit that in? That's where I choose to spend that portion of my time. Some people are like, and they say I don't have any time. I'm like, well, what are you doing during that time? Oh, well, I garden, or I watch TV, or my kids have this. Okay. So we have the same time, but you're just doing something different during that time. Right.
Yeah.
So that's, just like, it's not that I fit it in. It's just like, that's how I choose to spend that block of my time. Somebody might be doing something else that I have no interest in, but I have to say with the working out, because it was so ingrained in me from Jane Fonda, God bless her. I mean, she just got me in that ethic, like, early on in my life. When step aerobics came out, me and my older sister started doing it, and we're like, this is the best, because it was fun, and the music, the cute outfits and everything. And it was just something I did my whole life. I've always worked out. And then I started running actually later in my life. I didn't start running until I was 39 years old. And the way I got into that, and it's a quick story, I promise. The way I got into that was was doing this boot camp class, and there were several of us that we were getting a little competitive with each other. And our instructor was all like, all right, you four get on the treadmill for half an hour before class, because she felt like we had extra energy we needed to burn. So we got on the treadmill and I start running. I'm like, oh, I kind of like this. I'd never been on a treadmill before. I'm like, this is really fun. And I'm like really enjoying it. And I say to my friends, I said, hey, why don't we all run a 5K? That would be really fun. And they're like, that doesn't sound fun at all. I'm like, I think that sounds fun. I'm going to do it. So I signed up for this local 5K. I went and didn't know anybody there, went and did it myself with the 200 other people that had signed up. And I had a great time and I loved it. And I wasn't fast or anything. I just did it for fun. So what happened was, the competition was over. I'm walking back to my car by myself. I'd gone by myself. All of a sudden I hear my name called, and I'm like, what? And it turns out I had won my age group. And I'm like, me? I won a $10 iTunes card, and that kicked off my running career. And I'm like, if I can do a 5K,
competition?
Yeah, I'm like, wait, if I can do a 5K, I can do a half marathon. I immediately went home, signed up for the Malibu half marathon, and it was on. It was on. I was like, this is so much fun.
Oh, that is so great. So see, everyone, this is what I love, is like when you're really passionate about whatever it is you're doing, whether it's doing a marathon, whether it's, doing social media, whether it's getting promotion, whether it's just interviewing, having a conversation, when you're all in it, that is just the best, right? And that's how I love to feel. That is why I love podcasting. That's why I love promoting other women and men too. But I love that sort of promotion side of it, because it feeds me back when I hear all these wonderful stories and this exciting passion that you have for your businesses. So Stefanie, I'm so glad you joined me for International Women's Day and took time out. I know you're at a trade show and it's so busy, but I'm so glad you did.
Yeah, no, that's why I picked the last spot purposely, because I knew that I would be done doing the work that I had to do and everybody was going to be heading over to the party. So now I get to head over to the party, and the first wave of people that went to the party are probably leaving. So I'm at the optimum time to get food and drinks and not have to wait in line. So this is just perfect.
So
I
you're
got to
good.
come back to my room and kind of clean up a little. So yeah. And when you were like texting me, you're like, hey, where are you? I'm like, I swear to God, I'm coming. I came back just for you.
No problem. I'm just so glad because someone missed their appointment before, and so I couldn't connect with her. So I was like, I know, am I done for the day or not? And so I'm so glad you joined me though. And this is the thing. So we have lots of promotion opportunities here at Podetized Brandcasters and Feed Your Brand. And the thing is that I think that it's so essential because sometimes we don't do a good enough job or we're just too busy to promote ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're out there promoting so many other people and so many events and so many things that sometimes we don't have enough time. And so when people push us and go, hey, come and do this interview, it really makes us sit back and go, oh yeah, I got to keep promoting my own business. I do have to do that. So I love to be that push for people.
Thank you. I appreciate it. As soon as I saw your email come through, I was all in. I'm like, yes, I want to be part of that. Obviously, I want to do anything I can to promote women in business and empowerment. I am the middle child of 3 girls. I mean, I've been surrounded by women my entire life. My poor dad was outnumbered since we were born. And, I'm into that whole feeling. And, we still struggle a lot with our own self-worth as women, and just like being able to step up to that table and everything and understand that, no, I don't have to ask permission. I can do that. So, I'm lucky. I grew up with parents that really gave me that instilled sense of confidence. So I feel like it's my job to help other women have that gift of confidence as well. So if women are watching me and they're like getting a little bit more of a boost and they're kind of like, well, she's crazy, but I'm kind of crazy like her, so I could do that. Like, I want to be that little push for women too. And I invite any women, that are listening to this out there, if they're having social media questions or they just want to know a little bit more about how to start their own marketing or social media business, please contact me. I'm here for you. I'll answer any questions that you want. I don't do coaching. I'm not selling a coaching business. So I'll just, I'll be there. If I can answer your questions, I will.
So that's, so we will have connections to your podcast and to how to reach you and how to find you. And all of that will be in the blog post. And I'm going to have the team add them all to our social posts within the comments. So at least that they can connect there as well. So if they don't want to ever leave Facebook, they can find out too. And so absolutely. So thank you so much, Stefanie. I really appreciate you helping me wrap up International Women's Day. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.